There was a show called Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood that changed the way kids watched TV. Fred Rogers had no plans to become a TV star. It was the most important thing to him to meet kids where they were, in the middle of their big feelings, small thoughts, and hearts that were growing. With a calm voice, deep eyes, and a neighborhood that changed lives, he did it. When Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood first aired on PBS in 1968, it didn't have stories that moved quickly or lights that flashed. It was so quiet that it was almost scary. "Won't you be my neighbor?" Fred Rogers would sing as he hung up his coat, put on that famous sweater, changed his shoes for trainers, and walked in the door. That was more like a visit with a good friend than a TV show. That was the point, though. Fred made the show to be a way to teach people about their feelings. Other programs taught kids letters and numbers, but Fred helped kids deal with their emotions, like fear, anger, sadness, and happiness, by giving them words to describe what was going on inside them. The show talked about divorce, death, race, and disability, and it never talked down to its viewers. It was slow TV, yes, but it was done on purpose. Some episodes also went into the silly world of make-believe, where puppets like King Friday the 13th, Daniel Tiger, and Lady Elaine Fairchild acted out short plays based on real events. Fred voiced a few important dolls himself, and each one showed a different side of his personality. From 1968 to 2001, there were 31 seasons of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, with a total of 895 episodes. And it's never happened before for a show with such a specific goal. But it wasn't flash that made it last, it was heart. Fred knew kids didn't need more noise. They needed to be still. They needed to be honest. They also needed someone who wouldn't treat their issues like they were nothing. Each show felt like a comforting time capsule. There were no laugh tracks, loud sound effects, or commercial breaks. Fred just talked to the camera as if he were talking to you. A lot of people thought that 30 minutes with Mr. Rogers was the safest part of the day, especially those who grew up in chaotic houses or felt like they didn't belong. The show had a small-scale mood, but the guests list could be loud at times. Fred asked people from all walks of life, artists, singers, scientists, even animals, to come over and teach, talk, or just be there. People like Yo-Yo Ma showed kids that music could express thoughts that words couldn't. Julie Child even came into Fred's kitchen and brought her charm and love of cooking with her. LeVar Burton, who works with Reading Rainbow to promote reading, was also a speaker. David Copperfield, who made the neighborhood a little more magical. Tony Bennett, who sang with a smooth voice and real warmth. People were amazed when Coco the gorilla used sign language to talk to Fred. It was a touching moment that people will never forget. Fred treated all of his guests with the same respect and dignity, no matter how popular they were. That was the magic. Everyone was important. The TV business paid attention. Many awards, including 4 Daytime Emmys, have been given to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood over the years for being a great children's show. 55 Emmy nominations, which shows how steady and important the show stayed. The Cine Golden Eagle Award goes to Let's Talk About Going to the Doctor and other great teaching films. And at the Daytime Emmys in 1997, Fred was given an award for his lifetime of work. He famously asked the crowd to be quiet for 10 seconds and think about the people who helped them become who they are. His winning speech was very moving. The room stopped moving. However, it wasn't about the medals. It was the real prize for Fred to know that kids felt loved and understood. People still thought about Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood after the show finished in 2001. New generations of kids keep finding out about his calm voice, gentle advice, and presence while wearing a cardigan thanks to streaming services and YouTube. And shows like Fred Rogers Productions' Daniel Tiger's Neighborhood carry on his work with new stories and characters that are based on the same values of being honest and kind. "Being honest is the best gift you can give," Fred once said. That's what he did for more than 30 years. That truth is always right in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. You have to meet the woman who was always there for Fred Rogers to fully understand him. Their story is really strange. What did Joanne Rogers do? Even before Mrs. Fred Rogers' name was in the news, Joanne Bird was writing her own story, which was anything but normal. Joanne was born in 1928 in Jacksonville, Florida. She grew up in a home that valued music, talk, and being curious. Her folks weren't flashy or rich, but they were kind and determined. Her father was a traveling salesman, and her mother was a stay-at-home mom who set rules and loved running the house. From a very young age, Joanne learned how to listen more than talk when it was important. Joanne quickly turned music into more than just a hobby. It was her language. She was already making news as a piano prodigy when she was in elementary school. She didn't play to show off. She played because it made her live. She played all kinds of music, from classical to jazz to cool music to country tunes. It was clear she wasn't just following her interest when she got into Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. She was making a way. When Joanne got to Rollins, she majored in music performance. She quickly became known for both her technical skill and the soul she brought to every piece. It was seen by her teachers. It was clear to her classmates. With notes that seemed to say more than words, she could connect with people and draw them in, whether she was playing by herself or with other musicians. But Joanne didn't need to be in the spotlight. She had no desire for fame. She cared more about people, close friendships, honest conversations, and a feeling of belonging. She knew how to make you think and laugh, but she also knew when to ask you something that would make you stop and think. After college, she continued her education at Florida State University. Eventually, she moved to Pittsburgh to study at Carnegie Tech, which is now known as Carnegie Mellon. There, she improved her skills and pushed herself artistically. She grew as a singer during this time, but she also grew as a woman as she found out who she wanted to be in the world. She also taught as a way to give back. In the 1950s, she taught young people at Chatham Call's Primary School of Music, where she shared her knowledge and love of music. She taught at Carlow College for 4 years in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Joanne was a great stage pianist in addition to being a teacher. As part of a piano duo, she played with her longtime friend Janine Morrison. They made 2 albums together, Duo Piano Favorites and a Virtuoso Duo Piano Showcase. Joanne didn't fit into a mold even back then. She wasn't trying to get married or become someone's helper. She saw herself happily married, living on her own, and being able to express herself freely through singing. Whether she was playing the piano or having coffee with a friend, she brought heart, charm, and a calm that would not waver. Joanne's services to the arts were noticed after she had died. In 2019, Duquesne University gave her an honors degree to recognize her lifetime of service to music and education. That's why it wasn't a surprise when she finally met someone with the same depth of character and creativity. 2 lives came together at the right time. The love story behind the right time. The love story that came before the story. When you've been married for decades, it's easy to only see the surface. With matching clothes, a shared home, and a big smile, they look great. There was a story behind Fred and Joanne Rogers' love, though, that made it stand out. Their love wasn't loud. It began in the quiet areas of a Florida college music hall. In the late 1940s, Fred and Joanne met for the first time at Rollins College. They were both music majors who loved what they did and didn't know it, but they were about to become the most important people in each other's lives. It wasn't easy for Joanne to be impressed. As a child, she was always into singing and had a sharp mind that could see right through lies. It wasn't Fred's charm or his big future that caught her eye. It was how he paid attention. They talked quickly and had their own inside jokes. Fred could go to Joanne when his work got hard or the outside world got too loud. James and John were their sons. Each day at home was planned and cozy. Joanne was more than just Fred Rogers' mom. She held the family together emotionally. She gave him space, let him work on things, and pushed him when he needed it. She knew why he was quiet, what he did every day, and the deeper parts of him that no one else saw. The most important thing is that she didn't try to change him. A lot of people think Fred Rogers was easy to understand. Yes, they are kind, but they are also simple. But people who knew him well, like Joanne, saw that he had many sides. He carried the pain of other people. He really worried about what he was doing and whether it was enough. That was only someone Joanne really got, though. She held all of his complicated parts without fear and let him be both kind and broken. Fred became a well-known and liked public figure, but their marriage stayed strong. They were not interested in praise or notice. They lived for mornings full of music and laughing that would break out in the most ordinary situations. Being fully known and still loved is what makes a friendship strong. The beautiful thing about what they told was that it wasn't a fairy tale. Behind the story was a love story based on hard work, mutual respect, and a strong bond that would never break. Everyone else saw Mr. Rogers as the kind man in the sweater, but Joanne knew the man who was really behind the camera. She saw his worries, his fears, and how hard he worked. Everyone else didn't know what she knew. Those parts were holy to her. And just maybe, that's what makes their story magical. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and they picked it over and over for more than 50 years. He was the neighbor we all loved while the cameras were rolling. But as soon as the lights went out, a different Fred would appear. The public face and the inner man. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name Fred Rogers? Most likely a calm man in a soft cardigan who tied his shoes and spoke to you straight as if you were the most important thing in the world. His voice was steady and slow, like a lullaby. It felt safe to hear what he said. Fred wasn't just a TV host for a lot of people. As a child, his voice filled me with warmth and helped me through hard times. People have thought for years that the Fred you saw on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was the real Fred. Not an act or a screen. That was mostly true. Fred Rogers taught by example. He believed in being kind and did it every day, even when no one was watching. People he worked with and friends always agreed with this. It's not how perfect he was that makes his story more powerful, it's how he wasn't. Fred's wife of more than 50 years, Joanne Rogers, once said that her husband was kind, but he wasn't perfect. Not in the way that some people think of as sugar-coated and invincible. Just like the rest of us, he got tired, had problems, and dealt with worry and doubt. She knew that man. From her point of view, the kindness was real, but it took work. Fred picked to be nice. He did his best. That's a very honest statement. From the outside, Fred looked like he was always calm. But on the inside, every move was guided by a quiet routine. To make sure he stayed at 143 pounds, he did things like swim every morning and weigh himself every day. He thought about that number a lot. I get 1 letter, love gets 4, and you gets 3. Something small that means a lot. It was hard to live up to that picture though, because people thought you should always be kind and thoughtful. He was an idol to a lot of kids, after all. He didn't want to let them down. More than most people knew, that duty made him feel heavy. Even though he never said anything bad about it in public, Joanne could tell how hard it was on him. She saw the tired days, and the quiet times when she doubted herself. She also saw the times when their marriage was put to the test. For a long time together, they had good and bad times. Joanne said that she was usually the one who dealt with their 2 boys' behavior problems. Fred always had to be the nice guy, which was hard for him. Sometimes it felt like too much or too little. His work was important to him. He put everything he had into it. There are times when that kind of emotional involvement is too much, not just for the person doing the work but also for their family. Fred had a beautiful purpose, but he was also very responsible for it. That meant that sometimes Joanne had to be the rock while he carried the emotional weight of a whole generation. It's interesting how human all of this is. When we praise someone, we call them a hero, and we expect them to never fall. Fred didn't live in that dream, though. He was real, which meant he needed breaks, made mistakes, and needed help when things got tough. That's not to put him down. Joanne helped us see that side of him. It made his goodness even more important. Fred had a strong feeling. He was interested in people. His feelings were sometimes hurt because of that. That's what made Fred unique. He picked to be patient. He chose to be soft. When he had every reason to be angry, he decided to believe in the good. Making the choice every day to live by love is what turned a quiet man and a jumper into a living legend. But there's a terrible truth behind all that peace and kindness. Joanne Rogers didn't hide the truth. Joanne Rogers didn't be afraid to talk. Something that helps us understand Fred better in a new way. The terrible truth. If you hear the term, awful truth, you might think of something shocking or dirty. What Joanne Rogers says about Fred isn't a big secret, though. It's something much more real and delicate. It's hard to share this kind of truth because it comes with pain, weakness, and calm power. People love Fred Rogers because he was always calm, warm, and kind. But as his wife, Joanne saw parts of his life that not many people did. His last days were marked by a fight with stomach cancer that was more than just physical. It was also an emotional and spiritual journey for both of them. When they are not being watched by cameras or the public, this is when the terrible truth starts to come out. It's not about failure or shame, but about the battles of the people behind the famous person. Joanne has been honest about how brave Fred was when he was sick. But it also showed times when he felt alone and doubtful that were never a part of his public image. Fred was kind and patient, but he also had his own problems. Fred's sickness was a surprise. At first, all he had was some pain and stomachache, which were easy to ignore or explain away. Joanne remembers how he tried to deal with the pain alone, being careful about what he ate, and putting up with his rising unease. But when the pain got too much, they finally did something about it. It was bad news. The cancer had spread, and things didn't look good. The long days of treatment, the physical pain, and the growing sense that time was running out made Fred less sure of himself and more open to being hurt. This man kept going because he was set on keeping the things and people he loved in his life. He even showed up as the Grand Master of the Rose Parade in Pasadena in January 2003, just a few weeks before he died. This showed how much he cared about his duties and the people around him. Fred was in the hospital for a while, after having surgery to remove part of his stomach. From there, he went home. Whenever he felt down, Joanne says that playing the piano gave him a moment of peace and comfort. He died peacefully at home on February 27, 2003, with his family around him. It was the day after his grandson's birthday. Joanne didn't say much about many of these things for years. Part of the reason was to protect Fred's privacy and the reputation he had worked so hard to build up over the years. But as time went on, Joanne saw that keeping this part of Fred's story from the people who loved him wasn't fair. She thought that telling him the truth would help her honor him in a more genuine way. One of the most moving things about Joanne's thoughts is how the cancer changed her relationship with her husband. Fred had been the beloved, stable anchor in their family for a long time, but his illness changed everything. Giving care to someone else was a big responsibility for Joanne, and it was hard for her. She talks about how much love she feels for someone, and how hard it is to see someone so full of life go through such a hard fight. At times, the man she loved so much needed her care, her patience, and sometimes just her presence to let his pain be heard. Recently, in interviews and films, like the well-known Won't You Be My Neighbor, Joanne told some less well-known stories about Fred's last years. As an example, she talked about how he kept his humor even when things were hard. Fred was still able to find light in the dark even when he was sick. It just changed, showing a different side of him that was just as amazing. In an interview, Joanne talked about the days before he died and said, "You know, we're going to be okay. We'll be fine. I'm going to try to be fine, and the boys will be fine." So, I could tell he was happy and at peace when he left. Because she wants to love and protect you, Joanne has decided to share these stories. She knows how important Fred's impact is, and how many people have looked up to him as a source of kindness and hope. She said, "Wouldn't it be nice if we could just tell ourselves, 'Okay, you grieved. 2 years after he died. It's time for you to cry. You need to get your act together now.' That's not how it is for me. Some days I'm really pumped up. Some days I'm worn out. It can be hard to deal with grief." Joanne's thoughts help us see Fred Rogers not as a famous person from a long time ago, but as a man who, like all of us, dealt with pain and doubt. But he decided to be kind and honest until the very end, through it all. So, this truth isn't terrible in a sad way. It's strong. Joanne didn't finish the book even after Fred died. She turned the page instead, and what happened next shocked everyone. Fred's memory is being kept alive and spread thanks to Joanne Rogers. A lot of people thought that Joanne Rogers would take it easy and mourn Fred Rogers' death in 2003. She did something else, though. She didn't fade into the background. Instead, she became the steady force that kept Fred's message alive. They lived together for more than 50 years and had a good time. Joanne also made sure that spirit didn't leave with him. Joanne had more than one title. As chair emerita of Fred Rogers Productions, she really took charge. The same company Fred started to make the shows he loved. She made sure that Fred's work stayed true to its core even as the media world changed quickly. Kids kept learning about friendship, feelings, and understanding from the shows, and they never lost their kind, caring touch. Fred's idea didn't just fade away because of Joanne's leadership. Instead, it kept getting bigger and touching more families. And Joanne came into the light as well. She talked about Fred's life and ideas on TV and at events, always making people think about how important it is to be kind. Fred's lessons went beyond the neighborhood where they were first recorded. This showed how important it is for kids to understand their feelings and the world around them. Joanne didn't just keep Fred's memory alive in the background. She went out and made sure that his message was still important. You might have seen Joanne in the 2019 movie A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. She had a small, but remembered part. That appearance wasn't just a stroke of luck. She was stepping in to share a part of their life with them. A glimpse of the woman who knew Fred best gave the story on screen a real human touch. In addition to the movie, Joanne was in documentaries and interviews, which let people hear straight from the person who lived with Fred every day. Joanne's job wasn't just to make Fred's kindness stand out. A big part of her life is also her love of music. She brought her own imagination and warmth to the table, and she was a very good concert pianist. People were moved by her singing, just like they were by Fred's words. It reminded everyone that art and kindness go together. People who knew Joanne also said nice things about her sense of humor and practical wisdom. These qualities went well with Fred's warmth and made her the right person to keep his spirit alive. After Fred Rogers died in 2003, the words he left behind kept spreading through the world he loved. The simple, mysterious code he kept close to his heart spoke the loudest. If you asked Fred Rogers what love looked like, he might have said 3 small numbers. 143. Remember when we talked about that? It wasn't just happen. It wasn't in style. Fred knew that 143 meant, I love you. There is one letter in I, 4 in love, and 3 in you. Simple, beautiful, and strong. You don't shout this kind of word, you live it. In fact, that's what he did. Fred didn't just talk about love. He made it a part of his everyday life. He even stayed the same weight for most of his adult life, 143 pounds. There aren't many people whose whole lives are based on a single number. Each step, word, and pause in between words that Fred took was fully planned. That number didn't end with him. In 2019, his home state of Pennsylvania chose to honor his life in a way that felt very much like Fred. As of May 23rd, 143 days had been made. It's the 143rd day of the year, so the idea was to be a good neighbor, say something wise, or do something nice. After that, Joanne died in their Pittsburgh home on January 14, 2021, at the age of 92. Just as Fred would have wanted, she was with people she cared about. She left behind 2 boys and a legacy that was just as heartfelt and long-lasting as Fred's. It wasn't flashy when Fred and Joanne were together. They didn't need to be. They thought love was steady, calm, and able to change things. And sometimes it only takes 3 numbers to say, I love you. Is it possible that Fred Rogers took a terrible secret to his grave that no one knew about, even though he had a sweet smile on his face? Joanne Rogers has now spoken out. In the comments, tell us what you think. Like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more movies like this. Click on the next movie to watch it.